Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Cisilion Live, coming to you from remote locations all over the UK via LinkedIn Live and via our YouTube channel. So thank you very much for signing up. Our regular viewers will know by now that it's an interactive session, and you can post questions to us in the comments, and we'll answer them in real time throughout the show. And look, it's these questions from you, our lovely audience, that make the show what it is. So please don't be shy. Like and share when we're done. Today we're talking about something really cool, and I'm joined by the usual suspects, Rob and Iqbal, as well as a special guest today, Alan Moran. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hey, so there's a real background low code, no code development right now, and one of the most exciting things for me is that it isn't just a product that you sell to a client and forget about. It's very much a cultural revolution in the approach to what has always been a very technical subject, creating applications and programs both for the enterprise and consumers alike. And as I said, it's not a product to be sold. It's a community framework that really does have the potential to change the whole technology landscape as we see it. And it simplifies the way organizations of all sizes create digital assets. Some key facts that the World Economic Forum predicts a shift to a skills-based economy over the next couple of years. And it's these kind of skills that will become differentiators and enablers for employers to upskill and reskill their teams, regardless of the background or technical ability within the team. A great tagline I heard earlier this week was, if you can imagine it, you can build it. And Gartner predicts that by 2024, low-code app development will be responsible for 65% of application development worldwide. And that's a huge number. And to give you an example of just how eclectic and accessible this new approach is, just this week we saw some news from Pakistan that 10-year-old twins, I'll say that again, 10-year-old twin sisters, Zara and Zanibia Khan, have achieved a certification as Power Platform developers. And if you're watching this, girls, kudos to you guys. Today we're going to focus on the practical uses for low code, no code development, and we'll be looking at the market leader, Power Platform from Microsoft. We'll be looking at the foundations which need to be laid to create your own community, and we'll be digging into some examples across the NHS, legal, and financial services sectors where Cisilion are working with our clients and with some of you on the call to develop your own and our own in-house expertise. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the panel to discuss this. And Rob, I'll start with a question to you, if you don't mind. Do you think this will really change the world, or is it just a fad that's really cool to talk about on a Friday podcast?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I mean, yeah, all of us on the panel know I'm a big fan of this. This is something we've been talking about and playing with, I guess, as a business ourselves for probably 18 months. I think to answer that question, is it a fad? I think, absolutely not. It's here now. We're seeing it. There are so many examples of where organizations are, I guess, retaking control of their business and making the technology and the tools work for them, rather than trying to take technology that's been built or has been kept or we're trying to retain in the business because it's got shelf life, and try to fit the way that we work around the product, right? So some great examples of that, and you jumped on that point, Craig, right? I think lots of organizations have, particularly in the last 9 months since whenever this horrible period that we're in started from, have been having to shift the way they work. Like, they've had to change the entire way they operate. Some haven't had to do a lot, but many have. They've had to change how they operate. They've had to change the skills base within the teams. They've had to look at cost savings or cost restructuring to make sure they can stay. And I think the point you raised earlier on, if you can imagine it, you can build it. Right? And I think that is absolutely now the case. We've seen organizations that we've been working with taking really simple that have always been laborious to do, right? So it's really hard to do that. It's a bit manual, and a lot of the time those things have become more of a challenge because everybody's working remote. So the things that used to happen that you didn't really think about because you just go and sit at someone's desk and do something, you now can't do. So whether that's around getting physical sign off for expenses or leave or a document that you're trying to get out to a customer, just be able to so actually, how would we do that if everybody was separate? Well, guess what they are, and we can automate those things. It's not new, right? This world of kind of workflow and automation is not new, but I think it's moved. So if you think about where infrastructure, network infrastructure and security has been for a while now with software-defined networking, SD-WAN, it's the days of building something and manually configuring it and scripting it and printing out the script and all those kind of things has long gone, right? We've been working in the SD-WAN space as an organization for many, many years. But I think we don't do that now. We can build entire data centers now through automation, right? Whether that's AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or anything else. And I think it's now about bringing that into the workplace. So it's absolutely there. We've seen organizations, very small, very large, really getting their head around, how do we need to improve the way we do something? And do you know what? Let's just build it. You mentioned Microsoft being probably the largest player in this space. And I think they arguably are. And I think what makes it really compelling is a lot of the things that we'll cover off today are included in the core license that many of you are going to have across your Office 365 environment. So it makes it very accessible. And because the technology is accessible, it's easy to try. And therefore, you kind of get the hang of it really quickly. The fact you can automate and build applications in the apps you use today makes that really key. And Iqbal, I know you've some really great examples that you're dying to talk about that we've been talking about this week. So I don't know if you want to share a few of those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, as you say, the key word there is accessibility. Working in kind of the modern workplace arena, many of our customers have started to adopt a lot of the cloud services like Microsoft Teams, and now we're looking to see what Power Platform can do alongside Teams to help people be more productive. And as you say, as part of an Office 365 enterprise license, every single user is entitled to that capability. The question is, what is the challenge? What is a problem that we're looking to address? And it can be quite difficult to think that it can be quite intimidating when you think about developing an app. And an example that I always kind of refer to, and many people may have come across this, but there was this one scenario, I think 2 years back. It was a chap called Samit Saini. He was a security officer at Heathrow Airport. He's probably responsible for checking most of our bags, to be fair. And he noticed that a lot of the way in which the airport functioned was very manual, paper-based, and a lot of what they had to do, all of the processes were time consuming, and he felt there's got to be an automated way of doing it. So he spent his evenings looking at Power Apps, and he identified in ways in which he can automate a lot of the processes. And within, I think, 6 months, he had developed a bunch of apps that were able to solve many of those issues. And within 12 months, they'd pretty much rolled out, and they were saving 288 hours worth of manual input. And what it was seen by Microsoft as a huge achievement, not because of what he did, but where he had come from. With no IT background, no development experience, he went in, learned how to do this, and was able to develop a solution. And just to give you an idea, I think it's a great story, but he started out as a security officer, and 18 months later, he was sat with the CEO of Microsoft, Satya, having a chat about his experience and how he's got to where he is. So I think we can all take inspiration from this example, and I think it'll be Al, if you could perhaps give us a view on some kind of real life examples where you've worked with customers to help them build apps that kind of gone on to solve some business challenges.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, the good thing about the whole sort of Power Platform is that it scales really well. So we've had engagements from the very big right down to the very small. When we're looking at things like on the smaller end, we worked with a marketing company that were looking for a HR sort of software solution that could deal with things like expenses and holiday requests, etc. But they were far too small to go out and buy a massive piece of software that was all singing and all dancing, because it just wasn't practical for them in terms of what their needs were. So, they needed a way to solve the problem of being small and having all of these processes that they need to manage. And they needed to do it in a very efficient way. So, after speaking with us, we looked at, how can we use things like Power Automate, Power Apps to do those kinds of approvals and things. And very quickly realised that, this helped in a massive way for them, because if, the HR lady was on holiday, then all of that slows down and that impacts their employees. And that was happening just in the office before the whole COVID world. And so we built out this Power Automate with approvals where people could very quickly sort of claim expenses, they could request holidays and things of that nature, and get that sign off from multiple levels. And the good thing about it is that because it's built against the profiles and it's pulling all of the information from the various aspects across the Microsoft license, it did a lot of stuff automatically. So it knew who someone's manager was, it knew who that manager's manager was, it knew who to communicate with in order to get those approvals. And it can all be tracked through a database. And it doesn't matter where that database is, it can sit anywhere. And so that solved a big problem for them without a massive outlay in terms of expense. On the bigger end, we worked with a large communications company that were facing a challenge whereby they were looking to onboard around 200 to 300 people within the next 6 months. Now, this is a commonplace practice for them, and typically they would have to onboard and train these users in what they needed to know, and they would get them in big training centres and they would deliver it en masse to massive audiences. That can't happen nowadays because of the way that the world is. Everyone's remote, nobody wants to go to these massive places and social distancing, etc. So for them, for their small training team, it was a huge challenge all of a sudden to get these 200 to 300 people onboarded. So we looked at, again, using Power Automate and Power Platform as to, okay, well, how do you train them? What resources do you use? And how is that allocated? And it was, based off job role, they needed to work through these modules. And so based off that, we built an automation system that allowed them to onboard a user, create their profile within 365, add them into an onboarding team, and then it automated all of the rest. So that user would then get assigned tasks. They would be given materials to say, this is what you need to work through. These are the deadlines. And then they would be automatically sort of tested throughout their journey so that they could monitor that progress at the training team level, as well as do things like pull out Power BI reports from the back end in that database to see how people are progressing, who's doing well, who's doing bad, that kind of thing. And the beauty of that is that it scales really well. And also, when we handed that over to them and said, this is what's built and this is how you work with it, they can adapt it and they can work with it to change to their ongoing changing needs. And it's become the de facto way. So even, fingers crossed, the vaccine solves all our problems and we all go back to normal, and they'll still use that as the de facto way. And, you find it grows arms and legs. And as a final example on the medium side of things, again, it's office attendance and registration. So looking at different offices around the country and, understanding who's in the office, who's going in, who's still home working, and being able to register that attendance, where they sit, are they socially distanced, and all the rest of it, as well as, pre-COVID guest registry. So who's on site, who's attending for meetings, who are they here to see? You can build that app through Power Apps, and we did exactly that. And there's other pieces of software out there that will do exactly the same thing, but often it's an economy of scale. So it's you'll look at the costs for that software and measure it against the cost of a Power App license, and you'll often see that one is easily more cost effective than the other.
Thanks, Alan. And Alan, you touched briefly there on the NHS and some of the work that they're doing, leveraging the tool. And I don't know, Rob, you know an awful lot about that. Rob, before I flick over to you, the audience, you guys have been very quiet today. Any questions that you've got, any likes or shares, comments, please feel free to chip in. We tend to respond very well to the questions. But Rob, I know you had some things to say there for us.
Yeah, I think, and Alan, thank you for some of the insights of some of the projects that you've been personally working on with the customers. And I think the key bit I wanted to jump in there and I guess and say was I think as you say, a lot of those things, there's always a product you can buy for that, right? So whether it's whether you've got an issue with tracking stock inventory, whether it's an issue around tracking in the case of the NHS, vaccines, right? And we've done a bit of work with the NHS on some of those things. I think you're on the call today, actually, so hi. But it's also about making it work for you. Back to that point, right? So it may be that you've had to change the way your workforce are. It might be that you're gonna be out there now, I don't know, taking people's temperatures, checking that you've done your bit to make sure they're COVID safe. Go and buy a product, right? Of course you could go and buy a product, but is that product going to talk to the systems and put the information in the systems that you need it to go into? That might just be an Excel spreadsheet. That might be another application. And I think the point around what you can now do as an organization is just build the function that you need, the front end bit, right? The app that you need to track where people are. And then, as long as the applications you're working with have got an API or got some kind of data flow mechanism behind them, you can squirt that information or abstract that information from any of those things. So it enables you to kind of just address the actual business challenge that you've got, rather than necessarily go and buy an entire product that does 50 things when actually you only need it to do 3 of those things. So I think you're right. It does balance that. What do you need to do? How quickly can you get it out there? How easily can you do it? And does it work exactly for you? I think at the same point, it raises lots of questions. And one of the questions I expect people to get started using Power Platforms and this to be asking us is, well, yeah, but okay, isn't that all a bit scary, right? I'm gonna start, or the ability to write apps. Well, what about security? What about compliance? How much is it going to cost me? Iqbal, do you want to just touch on some of the ways we hopefully can give some of that advice back to the listeners?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's you're right. It's many organizations could potentially go and start developing these things themselves, and that's all well and good because there's no cost to actually develop these things. It's when you actually go to production and expose this to users where things can start to get out of control. So I think it's important that there's a governance piece that's done right up front before you do release any apps. A lot of it depends on what the intent of the app is. At the end of the day, if you're looking to just plug in to your productivity tools, if you're an Office 365 enterprise licensed user, there's no issues with it. The issue, well, not issue, but I guess what can become quite costly is when you're interacting with external sources, other databases. That's when you start to then look at being licensed for other services, where you can start to purchase single app or unlimited app licenses. Again, depending on what the specific needs are. And then kind of beyond that, if you're looking to expose services to the wider audience, i.e. Via a website, you can start to invest in those what Microsoft call portal licenses as well. So it's really a case of understanding the intent at the outset, understanding exactly how many sources you're looking to connect to, how much data storage is needed, all of that. We can certainly help you as an organization understand what challenge you're trying to fulfill, and then we can pretty much cost it. Unfortunately, Microsoft haven't made it very easy to understand the license mechanism behind this, but actually it's a lot simpler than it used to be. And we run workshops with many customers to try and identify that. I know we'll talk through some examples of the types of packages and services that we can offer, but ultimately this isn't about us necessarily selling a particular service to the wider audience. It's to really inspire people to start somewhere. And me personally, I'm always looking for ways in which I can improve the way we use processes internally, whether, as Rob, you gave an example of as a simple approval process. For us, when we are building proposals and things like that, we need peer reviews, we need to get it approved internally. All of that is automated now through Power Apps. So there's some really good examples for us to start with. Now, Rob, I don't know if you want to delve into what particular services that we can offer as far as the packages are concerned. Maybe a good time to maybe give some examples.
Yeah, I think we might have a slide to we don't like doing many slides, but I think we do have one to so I can remember all the things that we pulled together. So essentially what we've tried to do is and you know, the purpose of these sessions isn't to try and sell you a load of stuff, right? But it's really to give you an idea of an effort perspective, right? That's required, because it's not a lot, right? To really get going and see what's possible. You're not talking about a huge amount of expense and training and these kind of things, right? And in fact, the Power Platform portfolio is designed to be really easy to use, right? So if you use it, it's quite drag and drop. It's called low code, no code for a reason, right? It is generally, you can build services, you can build approval processes without writing a single line of code. It's, you know, it's useful to be familiar with syntax. So, you know, there is a little bit of almost kind of Excel formula type level, and that's not really code, that is formula level stuff. That's kind of as deep as you buy. But most of the stuff is you know, drag and drop. It's building from built-in flows that are there and those kind of things. But I think, and Iqbal, to your point about the governance piece and the licensing piece, which is really, really important, my biggest piece of advice, and anybody that's already started this journey, is you can build a completely independent development platform, right? So you can, you know, and when you start, and actually when you enable Power Platform within your Office 365 environment, it will ask you where you want your data stores. You know, please use that, right? Use that dev area you can set up. It's licensed the same way, you don't pay more to license it and those kind of things, but it gives you a little bit of that freedom to give people and you know, the ability to try things out, right? Because what we find with this is it's not driven by IT, right? This is really about giving the business IT to enable them to transform the way they work, or work better, work smarter, work faster, all those kind of wonderful words that everyone talks about. So the things that we found really successful, and we built this really based on a, you know, what have we been asked to do over the last eight to 9 months with existing customers. So I'm going to start left to right. Probably the most popular is what's known now. It's not our name, not our terminology. It is a hackathon, right? So this is really about bringing a group of people together from around the business that aren't, you know, don't need to be in IT, and in fact, with us, they're not in IT, but that have a good idea about how their part of the business functions, right? And you really want them to sit there and map out what works, what doesn't work, some of the frustrations that they may have. You know, these may already be recorded. Prior to that, we're going to give an overview, right, of actually what is Power Platform. So Power Platform 101, give some examples, demonstrate some of the things that we've talked about through some either click-through demos or demos that we've actually built, or entire environment. And the idea is to then empower your organization to think about some of those things, and then come back on day 2 or day 3 with and almost vote on the best ideas of, you know, actually it'd be great if we could do this, or if we could, you know, have a process that would pull some data from this system and stick it in here. And then on the 2nd or 3rd day, we build a prototype, right? It's not going to be a finished, polished article, but it's enough to kind of give you that mindset of from concept to idea through to actually a working product set. We can build it, and you can have it on your mobile phone, and it will authenticate you, and it will single sign on, and so we tend to find customers that are kind of like, why do I want to do this? Tell me a bit more about it. That's a really great place to start. If you've got a good relationship with your Microsoft team, they will quite often fund these kind of activities, right? So Microsoft have got a lot of expertise, of course, in this area. They may have delivered 2 or 3 hour webinars with you before, but they will generally, you know, if you're seriously interested, they will usually, you know, part fund some of these things. But what we've done on the last 4, and I won't go hugely into detail, they're hopefully quite self-explanatory, but is again just to give you a bit of a starter pack really of where you might go. So the first one there is this conception of a bot, a virtual assistant, an Alexa, if you like, for your organization. Why would you want one of them, you ask? Well, quite often it's, the way in the world in which we're in, we are in chat, right? A lot of the time we are in chat-based sessions in Teams or WebEx or whatever we're using. And the people are used to asking people in the organization how they do something. The whole reason that, products like Amazon and Alexa and stuff are so popular is because it's all about saving time. Alexa, can you order me so-and-so, or what's the weather like today? It's all about saving you time, opening something, going, getting it. And think about that within your organization as the same thing. Who do I talk to about this? How do I book off a day? What's our latest terms and conditions document? And yes, you can go and find that stuff, but wouldn't it be great if you could ask a virtual assistant and it could go and help you? So and you probably don't know what those things are that your employees would ask, right? Because you've never had a bot, presumably, therefore how do you know what people will ask you? So what we tend to do is build one that does some relatively basic things, diary management, who's the manager of this person, those kind of things. But actually the most powerful concept of it is you capture all of the information that people are asking you. So it's a bit like if you've got an Alexa, I'm assuming most of you probably have, you ask it all sorts of things, right? And sometimes it can't answer you, sometimes it can't deliver back to you. The purpose of doing that is to try and get a grasp on what are the things that people need help with, and then that helps you develop the next case and yourself moving forward. And kind of moving across, so Power Automate workflow, that's relatively self-explanatory. This is about taking some things that are manual, that are email conversations, or can you just do this, or can you sign this off for me, or could you ensure the next time this happens, can you put an entry in this spreadsheet, or whatever that process might be that you've identified is a bit clunky today, and we'll automate it for you. So that might be booking time off, that might be approving a document, that might be anything you can think about. And the next level on really is the app side of that, right? So and that can be standalone, or that can be related to the other things that we've looked at. So it could be about data input. So it could be about, we really need a really simple way of tracking when somebody comes into the office and what desk they're sitting at, and can you please sign in on the application? And that application is going to then go back and do something else, and talk to something else. It might want to update a room booking system. It might want to put something in their diary, those kind of things. So the principle behind these really is to build, and we've got some descriptions that go with these, which I think we're going to make available afterwards. But it's a relatively, hopefully you'll agree, it's a relatively low cost, low effort way of getting started and really seeing what the art of the possible is. Because I think if you haven't looked at this kind of technology, I think once you start to do that, your imagination will literally run away with you as to what you could do and how you could transform the way that the business works. Craig, if you want to add anything to that.
No, cool. It's really self-explanatory. We're running low on time now. So again, if there's any questions from the audience, any use cases you'd like us to touch on, feel free to comment now or reach out to us once we're done. I think there are a couple of examples, or maybe just to spend the last couple of minutes on. One is the NHS itself, right? And I know we can't talk in depth, but the long story short, from a non-technology perspective, they're using Power Apps to ensure that people get their vaccines, the right kind of vaccine at the right timeline in the right area, and that's really well monitored. So there's one from the public sector, and I'm sure we can talk more about that on an individual basis. There's another one from the commercial sector that I'm quite close to, which is one of the world's largest privately owned financial services organizations were affected, that we work with a lot, were affected by the SolarWinds hack. And whilst it wasn't a Power Platform play, it was very much this, right, what can we create to give us some visibility into our network and protect our business from threat, and that was managed. That we managed to spin something up within a matter of 2 or 3 days for that organization, so that yes, it's not SolarWinds, it's not full network visibility, but it's a very rudimentary system that shows the traffic flows of the network. And I guess the possibilities really are endless with the tool. And I guess going back to the original point, if you can think about what your problem is, you can probably solve it with Power Apps. So about 60 seconds left before we wrap up. I want to say thanks to our guest, Alan. Thanks for joining us. Rob, thank you guys so much. I must find out where you guys are getting your hair done, because I'm massively outgrown. I need to address that soon. And I know in 2 weeks.
My good wife.
Say again.
My good wife.
Yeah, that's a good shout out for Katie Quickenden there. And look, in 2 weeks' time, we haven't nailed on our agenda. The world's changing so fast that we could do with some help from you, our audience and our viewers, of what you'd like us to cover. You might want to have a play around with some Power Apps yourself. Contact us, we can get you set up, and if so, we can review some of the work that you guys are doing out there, and your teams are doing. But for now, we'll say farewell, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks for joining us, and do stay safe out there. We're hopefully beating the curve again for the third time, and with a bit of luck, we'll be doing one of these in a studio again soon. But thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you.